Welcome, it's the 6th day of October 2025 and welcome to another very informative, educational and very interesting program tonight. Good evening. It's Standards in the Spotlight, brought to you by the Dominica Bureau of Standards. I am your host this evening. My name is Joseph Fadul. In just a few days, people, just a few days, Dominica will join the rest of the world in observing World Standards Day. It's celebrated every year on October 14th. As a matter of fact, I remember that I was around the same time last year that the Bureau's radio program resumed on DBS radio. It was around the same time, so we are just about not too far off the 1 year return. Tonight we will also talk about the importance of local development, the finalization of the national standardization strategy. Also, I remember a previous episode where we discussed a stakeholder consultation hosted by the Bureau of Standards, I believe, which was held in March this year. Yes, sometime in March, yes. And, it was held to gather feedback from Dominicans on the standards that need to be prioritized for the next few years. Joining me tonight is Mrs. Naomi Banis Sampson, the technical officer for standards development, and of course we'll get an update on this, talk a bit about World Standards Day and a few other things happening. Welcome to tonight's program on DBS, and Naomi Banis Sampson, welcome. It's great to have you back, Naomi. How you doing, Naomi?
Hi, good evening to the listeners of DBS Radio, and good evening, Fadul. It's really great to be back. I'm doing fine.
All right. So once again, tonight's topic is World Standards Day 2025 and building a national standardization strategy for Dominica. We'd like to welcome the listeners on the DBS Radio YouTube channel and the DBS Radio Facebook channel. It's being streamed live, audio only tonight, as always. And it's the 6th day of October 2025. We'll be back in about 30 seconds right here. Welcome back to tonight's program right here on DBS. The topic once again, World Standards Day 2025 and building a national standardization strategy for Dominica. Naomi Banis Sampson is with me tonight. She's a technical officer for standard development at the Dominica Bureau of Standards. So, Naomi, let's kick things off with World Standards Day. Remind our listeners, for those who may not know, because I know people would be like, but it have a Standards Day, man. So yes, there is a World Standards Day. What is World Standards Day all about? Give us a little historical background, and what's going to be the focus for this year, 2025.
So World Standards Day is an international observance that recognizes and honors standards development organizations and thousands of experts, volunteers, and stakeholders who are part of the standards development process. It is observed, as we said, every year on October 14, and it's also a day to spread awareness among regulators, industry, and consumers on the importance of standards to the global economy. For 2025, the focus or the theme is shared vision for a better world this year, and this has been like a recurring theme since I think 2021. But this every year they change the SDG that is being focused on. So for this year, the spotlight is on SDG 17, which is partnerships for the goals. And this emphasizes the importance of working together to achieve sustainability, whether it is nationally, regionally, or internationally.
Right. So SDG 17, SDG 17, partnership for goals. That's where the focus for this year 2025 is going to be. All right. Now, I remember last year there were a number of activities held by the Bureau in observance of World Standards Day. I'm pretty sure the Bureau as well probably has something. Are there any plans this year? If yes, what are some of the plans that Dominica and the Dominica Bureau of Standards are going to be putting in place, and what are some of the plans for this year?
So interestingly, this year we're keeping things a bit low-key. So, but we still hope to spread awareness to the radio, so including tonight's program. We also want to do a Did You Know segment on DBS, and hopefully our minister, the Minister with Responsibility for Trade, will share some words with the public on that day as well. And then we do our usual engagement of our stakeholders via our social media and emails, but we're keeping it a bit low-key this time around.
All right, and of course, keeping it low-key doesn't mean anything bad.
Right.
All right, because we don't, sometimes the focus doesn't have to be too public, but sometimes a little introspection focus is always good. All right, now somebody listening, and before I actually got a bit more engaged with the standards program and the Bureau of Standards, and I will tell you seriously, I was telling myself, boy, standards is boring. Boy, I was like, boy, I just want to kind of like just not have to deal with that. And I will be very honest with you, but listening to the program, in fact engaging with the Bureau like how I'm doing right now, it's not really that boring, but it's not really boring anymore. But for people, they might think, boy, standards can sound boring. Some people may even think of them, standards as just paper. You just have a thing right up on a paper and you're not doing anything about it. But what are some, like, every day, you wake up, you hop on the bus, some everyday standards, basic things that they affect you and me, but we don't know that, hey, that's actually a standard now, boy. What are some of the more everyday standards that affect you and me that people should know of? Some of them people may not even know that are actually beneficial to them.
So you are right, Fadul. For many people, standards can sound like technical documents that are locked away in an office somewhere. But in reality, standards, they are all around us, and they really shape our daily lives in ways we often don't even notice. So one of the simplest examples is the food you buy. And we've also spoken about this on previous Standards in the Spotlight episodes. When you buy a food product, it could be from the supermarket, a village shop, or even on the roadside. The label on the product is not just for decoration. So standards, they require that the label tells you the name of the product, the ingredients, the expiry date, among other requirements. And most importantly, it is for your protection as the consumer. So you can sit for a moment and imagine all the ways how. And the quickest thing that comes to mind is for people with food allergies. At the same supermarket or shop, you may buy something like rice or flour based on the weight. So let's say 2 pounds of rice or 1 kilogram of sugar. A verified scale, so the scale is verified based on a standard, ensures you really get the exact weight you purchase. And verified just means checking and confirming that the scale gives the correct weight. What about at your home? Every time you plug in your fan, your microwave, or your fridge, or any electrical appliance for that matter, you are depending on electrical standards. And they make sure the plugs fit. and most importantly, that the appliances are safe for use. In that way, the standards protect you or protect your home from accidents like fires or even you from shocks. So also think about the road. When you see a stop sign or a pedestrian crossing, anywhere in the world for that matter, you immediately know what it means, because traffic signs, they follow international standards. When you fill up your tank, at the gas station, you can trust that every drop of fuel you pay for is delivered to your tank. And that is thanks to metrology standards that test, verify and certify fuel pumps. In Dominica, you can look out for the Bureau's green sticker that shows you that a fuel pump has been verified and certified by the Bureau. Now, I'm piggybacking on some previous episodes that we've had. That shows you how the whole Bureau ties into standards. Health is another big one. The medicines we take, the bottled water we drink, the mask we wore during the pandemic, all of these, they follow strict safety and quality standards. And these standards, they save lives and they keep us healthy. Even your phone and charger, they depend on standards. That's why a USB cable, it fits the same way whether you're charging your phone in Dominica or overseas. The internet and mobile networks that connect us on a daily basis, they run smoothly because of global telecom standards. And let's not forget about building materials. So cement, steel and wiring, they are all tested against standards to make sure that your home, your office, whatever you build, it's strong, it's safe, and it can withstand the elements. So the next time you hear the word standards, don't think of it as something boring or technical. Think of it as the food on my table, the fuel in my tank, the medicine in my cabinet, the phone in my hand, the roof over my head, and I could go on and on. The standards, they are all of us, they are for all of us, and the evidence of that is all around us.
I remember the episode when we were talking about the green tag,
yes,
on the gas pumps. And since then, I'll be very honest with you, if I pass by a gas station and I don't see the green tag, I'm serious. And sometimes I have I have people with me and I check it, but put the gas there, and I say no. I know why I'm doing that is because, like you said, the pump has it has gone through the testing and it has been approved by the standards. Even our farmers as well,
yes,
they have the scales, the fertilizers that they use as well, they have to go for a standard so that what they sell to us in the market as well, at least the quality what we get is up to a good high standard. Especially right now, the independent season is coming up. You want to have good vegetables, healthy vegetables. You don't want anybody complaining. Right. So that's how everyday standards appear to us.
In everything.
No, people, they have that myth about them. They would still have it, and they might have heard you and they say, boy, I still not too sure. No, I still not too sure. How does the Bureau debunk the myth of, hey, standards are boring, I don't want to deal with that? How does the Bureau debunk that and clear that out of people's minds?
So we've been working to take some steps in the coming year, and we're using what has happened in the history. When I say history, like things that have happened in the past as it relates to data at work, the work that we've done with stakeholders and collaborated with other people. We've been working to take some steps in the coming year to increase the conversation and the awareness and the understanding of standards and standards related matters. So we are hoping to engage with the public more, whether it is through our radio program or other programs that we may be invited on. And yes, we are always open to collaboration. So if you have a program and you see a topic or you look at a topic where you think the Bureau would be a good guest, you can always invite us through our website and our social media pages. We intend to share more of what we are doing with the public, especially with the next generation. So, your children, the students. From time to time, we want to engage them in fun activities that will help to increase their understanding of standards. Because if they can grow up with an understanding of the standards that are needed in the world, then it's easier for them to be able to implement those when they're older. Another important thing we want people to understand is that while the Bureau is responsible for standards development, we do not actually develop the technical content of the documents. So our stakeholders are who do that. And our stakeholders, they make requests for standards. They sit on the technical committees that work on the technical content of the documents, and our stakeholders provide comments on draft documents. So the Bureau's role is really to facilitate the development of the standards. So we bring in all the different parts together to be able to come up with that final document. So going forward, we plan to host webinars that are open to the public during the standards development process, so that people can gain a deeper understanding of the draft documents while they are being developed, and to give their input or their feedback before the documents are approved as national standards. So it goes through a process, and then there's this particular period during the process where we what we call the public inquiry period, where the draft document is put out into the public, and anybody has access to it, to review it, to give feedback, to give feedback on the document. So we are building a strategy, firstly of the standards to be developed, and secondly of how we engage the public on standards matters. And we hope that by this time next year, the perception of standards being boring would have changed in Dominica.
Getting a full gallon of fuel or the exact weight of your purchase of fresh produce? Make sure you're getting what you pay for. Look out for the Bureau's green sticker at fuel pumps or anywhere you come in contact with a scale. The Bureau's green sticker means tested, verified, and certified. And you're getting a gallon for gallon and pound for pound. From city to countryside, the Bureau's green sticker guarantees safe, fair trade wherever you go. Visit www.dominicastandards.org or call 235-1592. If you have a scale which has not been verified, please contact us.
Those of you with scales, it's not been verified as yet, please contact the Bureau. Naomi, just continuing from the last point that you ended on, that gives us a kind of a good segue into the next segment on the national standardization strategy. Of course, we call it at the Bureau the NSS. So, and I know earlier on in the year, I remember we actually had the part where we came on and we were talking about the public parts, where it was out in the public could check it out on the Facebook page of the Bureau of Standards. First of all, remind our listeners, what is the strategy? What is the National Standardization Strategy, or the NSS? And why is it important for Dominica to have one?
So the National Standardization Strategy is basically Dominica's roadmap for developing and using standards in areas that matter the most to our country. So those we would call our priority areas. It's important to have a standard strategy because it helps us to set clear priorities that align to and supports our national development. So think of it like a business no company would set out to be successful without a strategy. You have to have a business plan, right? And you need a plan. You have to plan what markets to enter, how to use your resources, and how to meet your customer needs and still be profitable. So in the same way for Dominica, as we grow our economy, expand on our development, we're talking about international airport, geothermal energy, various infrastructural projects, improving our food security, our healthcare, and so on. We will need a strategy that is aligned with all of those plans. And because standards, they set benchmarks for things like safety, consumer protection, efficiency, and so on, Dominica will need to identify the right standards to develop through its national standardization strategy based on our priority development areas.
Right. So that was, just a little reminder of what the national standardization strategy is all about, and of course, again, why it is important that we in Dominica have one. Now, Naomi, what is the updates on that document? I think the last aspect of it, we spoke about was the public consultation, the public review. I remember back in March, the Bureau hosted a stakeholder consultation to gather information on the priority areas that were needed. What's the update? What can you tell us? Were there any results that came out of the consultation? Were there any priority areas that were identified? If yes, what are those priority areas? What's the update on the documents?
So when we held the consultations earlier this year, we brought together stakeholders from all sectors. So talking about farmers, business owners, tourism operators, the government, and other public officers, community groups, and associations. And we had them tell us what areas they felt standards should focus on for the next 3 or so years. Out of that, 7 main priority areas came forward, and that's in no particular order, but we first had resilience and sustainability. So this was a recurring theme because of Dominica's goal of wanting to be the world's first climate resilient nation. That cannot be done successfully without standards. So they will help make our buildings stronger, our energy cleaner, and our land use more sustainable. Secondly, trade and market access was another big priority area. And if we want our local products to reach the regional and international shelves, we need to meet regional and international standards so that our businesses can compete fairly. Thirdly, we looked at key sectors like agriculture, tourism, healthcare, energy, and construction. And standards here will mean safer food, more reliable health services, better tourism experiences, and cleaner energy. Fourth, a big one is supporting small businesses, since the MSMEs, or the micro, small, and medium enterprises, they're the backbone of the economy. So standards will help them improve their quality. They will help them to build customer trust and even explore those export markets that we keep talking about. And that will include some product standards and even a product certification scheme in the long run. Fifth, the stakeholders said they want the process of developing standards to be more inclusive and practical, and that will mean bringing together all the different sectors, as we mentioned earlier, the government, business, civil society, and even schools, so that standards reflect the real needs of the country. Number 6, health, safety, and the environment. That will look at standards for safer food in places like schools and restaurants, healthier workplaces. I don't know if you've heard of occupational health and safety in the workplace, cleaner packaging, and protecting our biodiversity. And the final priority is strengthening the Bureau itself. So to do all of this effectively, the Bureau of Standards needs to keep building its technical capacity. So we will be looking at some standards for boosting our services, especially the lab, and things like risk management and our quality management systems. So the document is now in its final draft stage, and the final draft has been prepared by the consultant on the project. If you remember, this was being done as part of a regional project that was funded by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. and implemented by the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, CROSQ, and to which Dominica is a member state. So later this week, we will be hosting what we call a validation workshop to discuss and finalize the document.
I remember we had, I believe, two guests. One was from Jamaica and one was from Guyana, if I'm not mistaken. When we spoke about the consultants, yes, I do remember. When we spoke about when we had that aspect. Naomi, quickly, what have been some of the challenges of the documents? What have been some of the challenges that have been highlighted? Maybe one or two of the more priority ones that people have told you all about.
Well, in terms of that, we could probably mention things like, just getting the stakeholders themselves to participate.
Okay.
Dominica is quite small, and sometimes it's the same set of people involved in similar things, and you have competing meetings and so on. So sometimes you might invite them to, let's say, a consultation or a workshop, and they may not be available. But what we try to do at the Bureau, because we have such a big, again, being small, you have such a good relationship with the same stakeholders, and do one-on-one meetings with them to gather the same set of information.
All right. Standards in the program, standards in the spotlight tonight, right here on DBS Radio. World Standards Day 2025, and building a national standardization strategy for Dominica. Technical Officer for Standard Development at the Dominica Bureau of Standards, Mrs. Naomi Banis Sampson, is with me tonight, and this is what we're talking about. We'll be back in about 90 seconds time, right here on your nation station, DBS Radio.
Stop to wonder if you're really getting a full gallon of fuel or the exact weight of your purchase of fresh produce. Make sure you're getting what you pay for. Look out for the Bureau's green sticker at fuel pumps or anywhere you come in contact with a scale. The Bureau's green sticker means tested, verified, and certified. And you're getting a gallon for gallon and pound for pound. From city to countryside, the Bureau's green sticker guarantees safe, fair trade wherever you go. Visit www.dominicastandards.org or call 235-1592. If you have a scale which has not been verified, please contact us.
Welcome back to Standards in the Spotlight, right here on your nation station, DBS Radio. World Standards Day 2025, and building a national standardization strategy for Dominica. That is what we are talking about tonight, right here on your nation station, DBS Radio. Now, Naomi, you mentioned that the Bureau is about to host a validation workshop for the NSS. But before we dive into the details of that, what exactly does validation mean? I know sometimes I pose that kind of a definitions question to the guests who come through. What does validation mean in the context that we are speaking of tonight, and in terms of standards?
So in this context, validation simply means taking the final draft national standardization strategy back to the people who helped shape it. So, our stakeholders. So, those from the stakeholder consultation, we're taking it back, the document back to them, to make sure it truly reflects the priorities that they mentioned during the consultation and the country's needs. Sometimes you could have during the consultation you could gather a certain amount of information, and then the consultant could put the information together, and some people may still feel maybe that one should be higher priority or lower priority. This is more realistic. In the next couple of years, they could give their feedback on it like that. So it's really like double checking before we finalize the plan.
Okay, well, so now that you've given us the definition of validation in this context, share with us some of the details of the upcoming workshop that's going to be happening. Who is invited? Who can attend? Who can participate? Give us a breakdown of when will it be held, and what exactly will be happening during that workshop, Naomi.
So sure, the virtual, firstly it's a virtual workshop.
Okay.
It's so that validation workshop is scheduled for this coming Wednesday, which is October 8th, 2025, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. We already sent out some invitations to a few of the stakeholders, especially those who participated in a consultation earlier this year. But this one will be taking place on Zoom. The link, it can be made available to interested persons. If they reach out to the bureau, we could send it to them. And as we said, we especially want the people who have participated in the consultation earlier this year, but other stakeholders are free to attend and participate. So the workshop is expected to give everyone, as we said, a final chance, a last chance to review the plan of action. They could suggest improvements and confirm that the strategy is realistic and ready for implementation. Sometimes you make a plan and your plan might sound a bit far-fetched.
Okay.
And based on your resources, whether financial, sometimes you write a budget and the money not enough. But you write it out anyway, and you try to do as much as you can. So sometimes they will tell you, make sure that your budget you make it's realistic based on what's happening around you. It's the same thing for the plan. And once it's validated, we can move forward knowing that it's not just the Bureau's plan, but it's a shared national roadmap for standards development.
Right.
getting a full gallon of fuel or the exact weight of your purchase of fresh produce, make sure you're getting what you pay for. Look out for the Bureau's green sticker at fuel pumps or anywhere you come in contact with a scale. The Bureau's green sticker means tested, verified, and certified. And you're getting a gallon for gallon and pound for pound. From city to countryside, the Bureau's green sticker guarantees safe, fair trade wherever you go. Visit www.dominicanstandards.org or call 235-1592. If you have a scale which has not been verified, please contact us.
So we spoke of the validation workshop, which is coming up on Wednesday, Naomi. Now it's going to be a virtual one, like you said. The stakeholders, of course, they've been notified. Anybody else who also wants to come, they can just call the bureau and be a part of it as well. Now, after Wednesday, once the strategy is validated, what is the next step from there? Where does the bureau take things from there? Is it in the bureau's hands? Does it move away from the bureau? What's the next step for the bureau from there after validation on Wednesday?
So I would say both. It's a bit of both. So pending the approval of the NSS, a lot of our national standards work development work has been put on hold because we've been waiting for that document to be approved. That's kind of our work plan. It's our map. So once it has been validated, my department will be looking to pick out some of the low-hanging fruits. And by that I mean we're tackling the easier standards standards that will probably like an international standard that we could just see it can just work in Dominica as it is, and we would just look to what we would call adopt it immediately or identically and move along. So we could also tackle some of the standards from the implementation plan. So in the implementation plan, it shows a timeline of sorts of which standards should be developed and by when. So if, for example, we have a table that looks at some of the sectors, some of the standards required for them, the priority of those standards, and then we pull out the year. So for 2025, we have a list for that year. For 2026, we have a list for that year, 27, and so on. And so our technical committees, as I said earlier, these are the people who really work on the technical content of the documents. They will be called back in to work on some documents, and other stakeholders, including the general public, will be invited from time to time to provide feedback on the draft standards, on the draft documents.
All right. So there is a list, let's say for 2025 already, that basically we're just going to have to just check off as much as we can of it before or at least try to check off as much of it before the end of the year, something like that.
There are a few of them that are doable, not to be like as national standards, but at least for the standards development process that the bureau can control. So that's the part up to finalizing with the technical committee, because after that, and we'll probably just dive a bit into the standards development process a little later to give a better understanding. But beyond the technical committee, you have approvals coming from high level.
All right.
So that sometimes may make things slow down a bit, but at least up to the technical committee, we'll try to see what we can do.
Okay. How will implementation of the strategy connect, link Dominica to the broader goals for trade, resilience, sustainable development, and things like that? Especially right now, we have free movement happening. We've just had the opening of free movement with 4 countries. The strategy, it has to have some way to be able to connect us as we grow broader. How will the strategy connect Dominica to those broader goals? I know trade is very important. We're talking about building a resilient country. We always talk about sustainable development, things like that. How will it how will it do that?
Okay, so to answer this question, I'm going to give some specific examples of standards on the work plan and share how they will tie into those broader national development goals.
Right. Okay.
So on our work plan, some of the standards I'm going to mention, they are listed as high priority for development. So let's look at agriculture, for example. One of the national goals in agriculture is the contribution of agriculture to our GDP, increasing it to 700 million by 2030. And we have what they call maximum residue limits, or MRLs, for pesticides on agricultural products. And MRLs, they set the safe levels for pesticide residues that can remain on food after the food has been treated and harvested. So it sounds a little dangerous, but once you use certain chemicals on your food product, even if you wash it or a little bit remains, so the maximum residue limits give you a certain value. If you test the product, that it mustn't have more than that amount, and any amount higher than the limit will be considered unsafe for human consumption. So the standards, the MRL standards, they will help to make certain that the food we grow and eat, they are safe for consumption. And when farmers follow MRL standards, their crops meet not just local safety requirements, but international safety requirements. So you know that this would mean that we can sell the produce not just in Dominica, but on our export market as well. And we know that's a big thing in Dominica, the pushing of fresh produce for the export markets. You know, from every Sunday, weekend, and even certain days in the week when you go down to Longhouse, Portsmouth, you have a lot of hucksters coming to deliver fresh produce on the port. So that's a big thing for us. It also means that farming that follows those MRL standards, they support sustainable farming. So coming back again to your term, sustainable development, and it's doing that by encouraging proper pesticide use. So if you overuse pesticide, you will also exceed the limit, obviously. So being able to stay under the limit means that you would be using your better practices in terms of your pesticides. So that's part of sustainable farming. And ultimately, it's protecting our soil, our water, and our biodiversity. You cannot be the nature island of the Caribbean or even the world, and you are, contaminated by those sort of things. So other high priority agriculture related standards include a specification for fresh produce packing houses. Again, coming back to that fresh produce, the quality of the fresh produce that we export. You also have some codes of practice for specific crops like cocoa, passion fruit, plantain, and these give information of best practices for cultivation, for post-harvest handling, which is how you handle the product after it is picked, and packaging. Alright, so these are some that relate to agriculture. Another national goal relates to our climate resilience. In order to achieve that sort of climate resilience and becoming the first in the world, there must be standards for things like building and construction materials such as cement, concrete mix, roofing materials, and so on. And it's really important because the moment you have errors or you have bad product as it relates to cement or concrete mix, you can have problems with your building. So some of these are high on the list for development as national standards, and will help to ensure that the buildings that they make, they're stronger, they're safer, and more resilient, and reducing damage from things like storms and natural disasters while supporting Dominica's climate resilience goals. Dominica also has a lot of manufacturers and agro-processors, and high on the priority list are some standards to address good manufacturing practices, GMP as it would be better known, and for GMP for things like cosmetics, for pharmaceuticals, for food processors and manufacturing. And these standards will help local producers maintain high quality, protect your consumer health as well, and open up the manufacturers or agro-processors to new opportunities for trade and export. And another important goal is our efforts for renewable energy. We going really big into the geothermal energy. You can see also solar being another important one for us, and even wind in certain locations. So these standards, they deal with like the safety and compliance. There's one that I know for geothermal safety and compliance, and solar and wind installation. And so they will ensure that installations are safe, it's efficient, because efficiency is extremely important, because if you are not getting the proper amount of power from those the geothermal or the solar or the wind, it doesn't make sense you set up the system. So the standards help with ensuring, apart from being safe, it is efficient and reliable. And that helps Dominica to move closer to its goal of using more clean, renewable energy and reducing dependence on imported fuels.
You mentioned, time is kind of quickly going down on us. I'm curious a bit. Give us a summary of, you mentioned earlier about the standard development process. Give us a summary of what the standard development process looks like.
Okay, so firstly, the standard development process is made up of different stages. So the first stage is to identify a project. When you say a project, it could be an area, and I like to use the example of pencils. So somebody in Dominica could go around, shop at two different locations, look at two pencils that they bought from the two different locations, and they're not happy with the quality of the pencil that they receive from one store versus the other. And they can say, so why don't we do a standard for pencils in Dominica? And all they have to do is fill out a form that's called a new work item proposal at the bureau, and that kicks off the process for developing a standard. Now, the only thing is, when the form is filled, we must take it over to our stakeholders, who will then evaluate the priority or the need for a pencil standard. Do we really need it? All right. So if the stakeholders, if they agree and they say yes, then my job at the bureau is to help them to look for a technical document that they can use as a draft. Then we take that, what we call our working draft, we take that to a technical committee. So remember, I said the technical committees are a group of experts that work on the technical content of the document. So they are the ones who will say, they are experts. So they will say, okay, a pencil must have an eraser. A pencil must have graphite for the writing part. It must be made of wood. It can't be made of plastic. They'll give the technical aspect of that. And then once they work out the draft, then we take it to the public. Then the public gets to have a say. Right? If the public is satisfied with what is in the document, or if they are not satisfied, they can give comments and feedback. If we receive comments, we take it back to the technical committee, where they what we call dispose of the comments. And then from there, it moves to the final draft document. And as I said, beyond that, it goes to high level approval, which is with our National Standards Council, which is like, our board that runs the bureau. And then if the council agrees that the standard it's good, it is then recommended to the minister with responsibility for trade, who will then take it to cabinet and get it gazetted as a national standard. So that's the process in a nutshell.
Yes. We're winding down. I'm gonna throw a two-part question to you. In fact, I'm just gonna combine two questions as we have to kind of wrap up. One, how can citizens stay informed about the standards? How can they also contribute their views? I know that there's the workshop on Wednesday, and what would be one key message you'd like to leave with our audience tonight?
So I would want our listeners to understand that standards are not just for government or for big businesses. They are for everyone. We said that at the beginning. And we all have a voice as it relates to the development of national standards, as I mentioned a while ago. And you can, as we said, you can propose, you can take part in the technical committees. So if you figure I'm an expert in a particular area, you can sign up to be part of a technical committee. You can provide feedback, as we said, on the draft standards when they're out for public comments. And so one thing I would like to mention is that during the public comment period, the draft documents are placed on our website. It's in the Gazette, it's in the newspapers, on our various social media platforms, and sometimes we send it directly to stakeholders. So it's to make it better for access for people. So I would encourage you to participate wherever you can and engage us whenever you can. And the more citizens engage, the stronger and more relevant our national standards will be. And I would also want to encourage them to continue listening to Standards in the Spotlight, tuning in every other Monday, and following us on social media as we aim to keep the public informed on matters related to standards and the Dominica Bureau of Standards.
And with that, we've come to the end of tonight's program. Thank you very much, Mrs. Barney Sampson, for sharing, speaking with us tonight, informing us, educating us. Thank you as well to our listeners for joining us tonight as we observe World Standards Day 2025. Let's remember that standards touch every part of our lives. They make our products safer, they make our businesses more competitive, our nation stronger. Naomi, thank you so much for being here tonight and elaborating on our very informative topic tonight. Thanks again, Naomi.
Thank you so much.
All right. And of course, don't forget the upcoming National Standardization Strategy Validation Workshop that's on Wednesday is another step in ensuring that Dominica has a clear, people-focused plan for developing and using standards. If you are able to participate, of course, we're encouraging you to participate. Of course, it's Wednesday. Please do so. It's being held virtually. Reach out to the Bureau of Standards for the information to join the workshop. You can visit the website www.dominicastandards.org for more information. Follow them on Facebook, Instagram. It's very simple, at Dominica Bureau. Give them a call, 235-1592. Shoot us an email, info@dominicastandards.org. Thank you very much. Next time we will be here, we'll be on the 20th of October. That's the next episode of Standards in the Spotlight. Naomi, once again, thank you very much, and we bid you a good night from us at Standards in the Spotlight.